Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next Forgeworks Grimoire, the second training series. Welcome to the next Forgeworks Grimoire, the second. There we go. Don't know why I was getting that. I think we're fixed there. But this is the second of the Forgeworks trainings. We're recovering an engagement insights engine today. And thank you for everyone who joined me either live or recorded for the first one, where we covered the Persona Insights Engine and built those 4 personas live, and just chatted a bit about personas. We'll start this training, as we always do, with our tarot read. Today, we are in the time of strategy, when tools are sharpened and vision takes form before the first spark of outreach. Next, we draw the topic. Today's artifact of attention. This episode, we focus on understanding. We are moved to better understand our students through their data in Slate. The third card, the practitioner, reveals our guide. Today, we learn from the Aetherbound. I guess we're learning from the Threadweaver today. I'll have to re-record this. The Aetherbound, who maps movement across both distance and behavior. And finally, the one that we serve, the student persona, drawn from the deck today, is Ghosted Greg, who once showed promise and then vanished without a word. Twilight settles across the Forgeworks as the forge fires dim to a low ember, and a restless hush fills the chamber. Counselors sense it long before the numbers confirm it. That uneasy quiet when a once engaged student stops replying to emails, skips events, or vanishes from the portal logs. Ghosted Greg is not just a single student. He is a pattern that haunts every admission cycle. The Aetherbound steps through the drifting haze, cloaked in strands of light that glimmer like constellations. Their presence bends the silence, drawing out threads of data that stretch from query results to deliver campaigns, from login streaks to the faintest open rate flickers. The Aetherbound does not chase students who have disappeared. Instead, they listen for the quietest signals still left behind. The subtle shifts that hint at hesitation before it hardens into an engagement score live. Not to capture history. In this episode, we join them to trace these nearly invisible paths. We build an engagement score, or we'll do it live, not to capture history, but to reveal the present moment when attention begins to wane. You'll see how a simple comparison of lifetime engagement to recent activity can expose the earliest signs of risk, offering time to act before the story ends. This is the art of understanding, where data becomes story, and story becomes strategy, so that the student who once leaned towards you does not drift forever into the unknown. We'll take as a guiding principle this quote from the Aetherbound. The quiet speaks if you listen. Let the data's faint whispers guide your next move before the chance to act is lost. In the training today, we'll combine existing engagement data into a score. And then we're going to be using it to spot declining activity before it becomes permanent. To do this, just do an engagement insights engine. To do this, we need to learn how to create several versions of engagement scoring. And I'm just in a clean slate environment. I don't remember which one I pulled up. Let's keep that in the folder. Let's start with our person-based inconfigurable joins. And we'll spin up several versions of engagement scores in our live session time today. We'll do a total score, a score at time of. This could be at time of application, at time of admission, at time of deposit, could be at time of matriculation as well. Recency score, and for the folks who watched my Slate Summit session or the recorded practice and those workshop walkthroughs where we did the builds, there's also entity options for this. I'm not perfectly happy with the daily average tracking, so that might be a later project that we do entities. So for this one, we'll just do a recency score and then actual subscores. And this approach turns everyday Slate tools into an early warning system that staff can consult during routine outreach planning. And we'll do this with a few behaviors, time permitting. I think the first thing that we're going to look at, though, is a few joins. We'll do an application join. We'll do by rank submitted. And this is just that number one rank application. Could be based on priority or recency with the submission date. And I think we can also probably join to, we'll just do those one off as we go. So we're going to do a subquery export, and everything we'll be doing today for this engagement score tracking will be through typically subqueries. And we'll just do campus visit count with a distance bonus. And this is more so to demonstrate some, again, those feature engineering pieces that we can add to our engagement scoring. And we'll do a formula export here. And we'll do a couple of more subquery exports. Because events and schedulers, and forms even for that matter, are scoped to a data table, whether that be the person or the application. In this case, you will have to do multiple joins and join to the form responses through the person, as well as through applications to count all of their events, assuming you have application scoped events and not just person scoped events, or however you're going to be counting these events. You could have them coded as interactions or some other kind of data coming in from a third-party system. But for this one, we're just going to do a count of person scoped events. And to get this number, we're going to do an aggregate output. And that aggregate output gives us a few different options. We're just going to count the number of event registrations, essentially, tied to a certain type of form. And we're going to join to form responses. Like I was saying earlier, we do have both person scoped form responses and application scoped form responses. So you can't just join to one of these and count all form responses that the person might have, or I shouldn't say the person, the prospective student might have attended, registered for. You would have to count, run these counts for both. So we'll just do person responses. And you'll notice the little wizard hat just means this is a complicated join because there are, you can do specific forms and events or templates. I can't imagine a time where I would ever really do this. I think it's always more flexible to build in all forms and events. I guess maybe it might be a little bit quicker to do this, but I generally wouldn't recommend it. You lose a lot of flexibility and reusability with what you're doing. So we're going to join to all form responses. And then I'm going to join to from the form responses to the form to get information about the types of forms that they are, the responses are tied to. And form responses is just generic because Slate uses these form tables and form response tables for forms, events, and scheduler. And we're going to restrict these counts down to specifically, and we'll just start doing that now. If we do type from that form data table, we can choose event. We can also choose scheduler. You probably want to score these differently. So we'll just choose just events. And we do reg status. And this is from that form response table. Just mark attended. You can do more nuanced points for registers, maybe negative points for no-shows, things like that. And then we're also going to do, because we want campus visits, and you might be able to get through this through templates or folder structure, but we're just going to use that online field and just say no. It might even be better to do like a not in yes if you're looking at that older data, but that would be pretty old data at this point. And maybe we do want to do a template, and this is a clean slate. I'm assuming they have templates. Yeah, let's do on-campus interviews just for the sake of having a template option here. I'm trying to think if we have time to do, yeah, we'll probably do a streamlined version of the as of optionality. So we're going to do just a date. Let's go to app submitted. We'll do the form start and date time. And we're going to compare this, and we say we just want to count these event attendances when the form start date is before the application was submitted. And if your population is going to include students who didn't apply, or if you're doing this for a time of admission and some of your population doesn't have an admission, basically that decision on their record to have a comparison for, you're going to want to do a coalesce. And I did more detail on this in the becoming a card shark at the data table. So we'll just do a quick coalesce just maybe we just do I don't know what the term is going to be called in the clean slate, but so we'll do a coalesce, and we'll do app submitted date, and then maybe we want to do I'm not even going to do decisions. We don't have time for that right now. This is a quick training. It's helpful to just kind of pre-build all of this, and you can inactivate those other data points when you're building. Typically, I would recommend building fields in Slate that are like your total engagement score at time of admission, at time of application, at time of deposit. It gives you those better snapshots, especially if you're adding this kind of stuff into predictive modeling. And being able to then also say what was their likelihood to enroll at time of application, at time of admit, and you have those snapshot data points just kind of built into your fields. So we'll do that, and then we'll just do formula. Well, I guess we can just concatenate since we're doing something pretty simple here. And because we're going to want to have data that you're not going to have to update this every year with a new 2025, 2026, we can just concatenate this, and we'll do, there's got to be some kind of like entry term. You can replace this with whatever field you have, and then I think we can probably just do an export separator of a dash, and then we'll just go 12. Yeah, 12. I think we used just December 1st. And a concatenate is just going to smush together these two data variables, and we'll change this format type to date, null value. Okay, hopefully you have a person entry term here. You do need to do some data cleanup at some point. Oh, maybe we just do, if there is no, well, then we're going to have this. Yeah, this is fine. You got to have an app. If you're working on your data, there should be an entry term on whoever you're polling. So we'll just say term 12, 01. So concatenate's just going to take that entry term and coalesce that into like a 12.1 to just give you like a generic deadline. It could be January 6th, could be January 1st, could be whatever your deadline is for applying. or deadline for, or whenever your admission committee is, if you're doing a time of committee, just to give you a better snapshot of what is the best comparison point for your non-applying students or your non-admitted students to still have that snapshot data. So we're just going to say that we want events they attended before they applied, essentially. So now we have a count of events that are on campus in a specific template that they did attend and happened before that they submitted their application, or before or equal to that app submitted. And then just put this as of app. And we'll make a copy of that without that particular filter. And this we'll just run this into several different fields in our source format. But we're also going to add an additional augmentation of the score based off of how far from campus they're coming. And when we get into things like campus visits, we also have some nuance that we also need to look at a bonus. So like, oh, okay, they didn't attend campus, but they were engaged with us. So maybe they didn't come to campus because they were too far, it was too expensive. They had other limitations of being able to come to campus. So being able to give students points, even though they didn't visit campus, but obviously they are very engaged. The campus visit just was not a realistic option for them. They didn't have time, resources, or physical ability to come to campus. So while we are augmenting and giving students a bonus if they're further away from campus and making those campus visits, there is the other side of the coin of not unduly granting points to just people who just had the money to come or had the time to come. So there's two sides of this coin. We're just showing one side of that coin right now. So we're going to give another subquery filter. We're just going to do distance bounds from campus. And again, I would probably recommend, if you want a longer version of distance, I have a really good school, then perm, then literal value distance to campus in that card chalk video. So I probably won't go into too great of a detail, maybe just, yeah, I'll just do a rank one. I'll just do proximity, geographic proximity. We'll just do the student address right now. We'll just do like an active address, basically. We can do permanent, do mailing, could do school, could coalesce these different options, but just for the sake of time, actually we're going to do a formula. Let's do a formula. Yeah, I think that'll be the easiest of the bands. And maybe we just, I think I had the same issue last time, as I didn't actually choose a longitude and latitude to compare, but that should be something. So we're just going to say how many miles is the student from, I mean, you would just use your institution's longitude and latitude here. And let's just say case when, and you could always rename this export to be a little more sensical or just a little bit easier to at a glance look at this formula. So when this is greater than, and if there's no formula here, we're just going to say 3,000 miles and just kind of throw them in with internationals. So if this is greater than maybe 500 miles, then what we're essentially getting at here is the further away a student is from campus might be a greater indicator of how engaged they are by actually attending this campus event. So if they're greater than 500 miles away, then we're just going to say that's 5 points. When they are greater than 200 miles, it's 3 points. When that's just greater than 0, then 1 point. And so we're getting this point. So someone who is further away gets 5 points. And what it would probably help if I ended my case statement. So we have the number of events that the student has attended here in this count, and we have how far away the student is. So what we're going to do is actually multiply the number of events they went to with essentially the score band of distance. So if they came to 2 events, but they were closer, they might get roughly the same amount of points in their engagement score as someone who attended 1 event but was really far away. And we can do a lot more nuance with this count. Maybe you don't want to count the fact that they did 2 events on the same day. So there is a ton of nuance we can add here with whether it's event counts or distancing or just understanding levels of engagement and supplement points that they're not getting because they just couldn't come to campus. So we're just going to say case when, and then if you had person scoped and application scoped, you'd want to add them together here. And we just do like count of person plus count of application scoped events. But if this is greater than, so if the number of events multiplied by the distance band, so 5, 3, or 1 point, and if that is, I typically like to limit the number of points. If you have an engagement score limiting to like the overall total to like 100 points, or some like anchorable cap, and then limiting the number of points a certain behavior can also give you is I find helpful. And we're just going to say if that's greater than 10 points, let's say, then we're just going to give the student 10 points. Else, so if that's not greater than or equal to 10 points, and we're just going to take that count, multiply it again by that. And you could also nest this actual formula here, number of events times that, into one of these subqueries. That way you're not actually running this multiplication twice in the query, you're just running it once, and then you're taking that value to do these comparisons and calculations. That might help with the compute a little bit if you're running a bunch of these on a large number of people. So then we have this value as of the application time, how many points they're getting for those on-campus events, those on-campus visits, and it's adjusted by how far away they are from campus. So maybe though we want to just get their total as well. So we're removing that date comparison. And we're getting a total. And since we're only going to do like 1 event, maybe we also want to do some kind of engagement subscore events. And you could be calculating a bunch of these event type behaviors together, or running this into multiple queries or multiple roles, however you're calculating this. So we're just going to say this is 10 points for the sake of this example. And then let's also get recent engagement. So let's get a trailing month score. And this will help us as we start understanding the context of a student that might be highly engaged, but the engagement velocity is decreasing, or maybe they're just stopping engagement. And this could be a really great point for personalized outreach, or some kind of incentive, or some kind of mailing or email that allows you to re-engage these students. Or if you're getting the sense that this is not a student that is just checked out, maybe I've seen a lot of things where people try these kind of weirder outreach initiatives to at least pique some interest, get them back into opening emails and engaging with the institution. So just understanding who are these at-risk flashing marquee students that might not be engaged or interested in coming anymore. So instead of being app submitted, we're going to do greater than, and maybe we just do a today minus 30 days. So like a monthly, trailing monthly, 30 days, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever kind of time frame that you're looking at to see where the engagement velocity is decreasing or increasing. That could also help you identify the students that are getting more excited, more jazzed. Again, I think the entity is probably a better way to go about this, but let's see. Nope, not date diff. Isn't there a date and? I really should like rehearse these probably before I record them. Yeah, it is date add. Okay, that's right. So we're going to add a number of time increments. In this case, it's the days. Do -30. And we're just going to do current date. So today minus 30 days. And we want essentially to say, what is the number of events, scored points, however you're tracking it, how many of those in the last 30 days? And this could be brought out across logins, ping data, mailings received, open rates. So you can really start narrowing down that recency engagement as well. So we're just, I should probably rename this. Greater than equal to 30 days. There we go. And whatever kind of naming convention, trailing month, 30 days. So now we have, what is their total engagement for this behavior? What was their behavior as of the application submitted? And for folks who did not submit the application deadline. The trailing month engagement, and then just like a subscore. And because we are only taking the time to build one event related behavior, that is just going to be our engagement subscore. Okay, let's go through the rest of the process of an export-import process. And if we have time after that, which I think we might, we'll build a couple other variables as well. And maybe we just want to... I know I imported some data. For the last persona engine. Oh, I probably made it. I have my. I don't want to run this for 105,000 records. I don't know. That should be my test records at least. There we go. So, and we can just do person ref ID. And we're also just going to schedule this export. I've done engagement scoring and predictive modeling and roles. That was the first thing I tried. I did not like that. I know there are folks who do enjoy that. I just, it's not for me. Not to yuck anyone's yum on roles. I just have not had the best experience with it. So I typically do, there's probably a better name for it, that import-export process, where Slate runs the query, drops it on its own SFTP server, ingests it with the source format, and you just set this to run however frequently you need it to run. typically engagement data on an automated sense. Maybe you can do that once or twice a week. Same thing with predictive modeling. And then if you have something like admission committee coming up, then you can run it one-off very easily, very quickly. So to drop it on Slate's SFTP server, though, we're just doing a couple of dots, 2 specifically, the / to push it back a layer from the folder, so it's not in the outgoing folder. You're actually going to tell Slate, hey, actually drop this in the incoming folder, and we're just going to say engage behavior. You can add some kind of timestamp stuff here, and then in your source format, use an asterisk to as a wildcard, essentially, but we're not going to do that right now. It's always nice to have like a failures at least notification, but we'll just do the nice Excel spreadsheet. You do overnight Mondays. You can suppress the empty files. You probably won't have them though. And priority, I would, since we are, I don't want to say daisy chain, but since we typically, for like an engagement score, you're doing the behaviors in a calculation, then maybe bonuses, and then the totals, I would not want to use requested priority to try to daisy chain those in a certain order. I would just choose different staggered delivery windows, especially over the weekend, just because there's not as much stuff going on over the weekend, especially in these windows. If you have overly taxed something like the overnight preferred window, especially with like applications coming in from vendors like Common App, Coalition, you just have a lot of stuff going in overnight, maybe from your other internal systems like your SIS. You might not want to load everything in on this overnight, but if it's something like, oh yeah, I run all of these through Saturday and Sunday, and you just kind of stagger them through these different requested windows per query, I think that makes sense. But we will just run this real quick. And run that. And then just upload that. And again, this is just a clean slate with my dummy student test data that I did for the Persona Insight Engine. We're going to do a new spreadsheet this first time. Yeah, we don't need a folder necessarily. So because you are running an import-export process, you probably should be able to update fields on applicant records. Again, it depends on what exactly the fields you are doing and if they're safe, unsafe, how you want them to be updating, when you want them to be updating. I would also say do an update only. You don't want to be creating new records because these are already records that are existing in your Slate instance. So you definitely don't want duplicates. And then you can just upload this. Let me grab that file real quick. Engagement Insights Engine. We can upload that. And you can build an import. And we can map this to our fields. I think I did person scope fields since these are just engagement scores. Yeah, behavior. So this was just a total. Yeah. This is as of app. Trailing monthly. Because as I just leave dead air on while I talk. I do have an engagement score here somewhere. Oh, yeah, here we go. I'm just going to use this subscore. I didn't have a specific calculation. I might come back and do that as its own export. So we'll do a subscore. We'll just also do this for now, just as And then, so we have the mapping. We'll actually generate a source format. Again, I would typically recommend no notification. I mean, notifications at least for failures. I don't think you want to get a weekly or daily email about this successfully running. You can add your email here. One other piece here, I would typically recommend, again, you're going to have a lot of fields. And I know Slate released some like not materialized views, whatever. Essentially, query runs are based now. I don't think that's anything that I would do. I prefer having the fields in Slate and then hiding those fields. And you could also hide like the sources behind us custom permission for just the staff who are going to need those fields. You don't want to clutter up someone's query builder with a bunch of random behavior fields. So that's some additional notage there for just being able to keep your Slate relatively clean for most users. I'd probably keep that unsafe, again, depending on how you're building this. I would typically hide source interactions because this is a reoccurring run that's going to be happening. You don't want a billion of these. And then for the import, what we're going to do with the source format is we're actually going to look at, I mean, it's a source format. So it's going to be looking at Slate's SFTP server. And we're going to look for that specific file. Let me see if I can find how would I name it? Yeah, so the import path mask. I think it was engagement behaviors. And if you did do some kind of timestamp, you could just do a asterisk as a wildcard. And that way, if it does say date, time, whatever it could be, it's just going to accept whatever files are in the SFTP server, regardless of what's coming after behaviors. One note, though, is if you are then running a second query to create the total calculations based off of the individual behaviors, and you named your previous query like engagement behaviors and then engagement behaviors total, that asterisk is going to pick up both files because it has the same base naming convention. So that would be just one piece of caution I would recommend there. Do that for now. So this then gives you the ability to do all of your calculations in your engagement insights query. And then Slate will just pick that up every week or whatever your timing cadence is, and then run it into the Slate fields. And then I would then in the next delivery window have a second query where you're taking those standalone fields and adding them together to create that total score. And maybe you're having bonuses, maybe like, oh, we don't require the FAFSA from everybody. So if they're not submitting a FAFSA because they're not applying for financial aid, maybe you're giving them opportunity to replace those points that maybe 10 points, 20 points, whatever it is, with their total. So maybe they scored a 60 out of 100. 60 out of a 90, since the 10 points for the FAFSA, they can't get that. So you're basically giving them 64% of the FAFSA points that they could have gotten if they were applying for financial aid. Similarly, if they're not attending on-campus events, but they're really engaged and they are someone who would be attending campus events if they could, you give them a bonus in a similar fashion where you're just replacing a certain percentage of those points, or using proxy behaviors. Maybe they're really engaged on email, sending us a lot of emails, answering a lot of emails. So they are a very engaged student, but probably a large portion of that 100 points you're assigning to these events that they're just not able to attend for whatever reasons. You're not trying to get points for just having money and being able to come to campus. So there is a lot of nuance when creating an engagement score that I would recommend having a lot of conversations internally about, looking at your historical data. What are the means of engagement for a student who's not attending events but is likely to come or is engaging, so you can be able to capture that nuance without spending too much time and digging through too much data and not doing other important things that you can do with this engagement score or predictive model, because you're spending too much time digging through data. So that delicate balance is always an interesting one to try to navigate. So we do have a little bit of time. Maybe we just look at, we could do emails, do material submissions. Material submissions, it's another one. You might have application scope materials. You might have person scope materials. You might have the students. There's so many different places that a student can have material attached to. So just make sure that if you are looking at material submissions, then you are capturing every possible option for them to being able to submit them. And not just counting just person scope materials or organization scope materials. So I'm trying to think. It's been about 35 minutes that we've been together, I think. Maybe we do one more. Let's see what's going to be the best use of our time. Maybe we do ping. Let's do some ping data. So ping, we have, it's typically a huge data table. Can be hard to query on, so you might have to run your ping behavior scoring and yet another query. You could run probably during the same delivery window, but it might just be a little intensive for to try to pull, especially if you're slicing it up in a bunch of different ways or with a large group of people. So we're just going to do ping, and we could do minutes. We can do unique URL visits. We could do URL unique visits across different pages, repeated visits on the same URL. There's so many different ways that you can really slice this up. If you know you have, instead of talking, I could talk and build at the same time, I suppose. So maybe we want to look at the number of minutes they spend on a specific page. So we're going to do a formula export, and maybe we're scoring it as well as doing some calculations on, or just math on, maybe you want minutes instead of seconds, whatever it could be. So we're just going to do ping. That's just nested inside another subquery. And we're going to aggregate. And this is where there again becomes that more nuance. If you want to count, maybe we're just going to sum. Sum's probably how you're going to typically do it. And maybe we want to do ping duration, which is going to be in seconds. You could do duration in seconds. You could do visits. I think actually I already have some pre-built ones. That's fun. Yeah, they're just doing count distincts for URL. That's nice. You could also look specifically. Here, I'm just going to do ping duration. And then we're just going to join to the ping data table. Let's just look at a specific website. So we can run a comparison. And again, this is an added layer of compute. If you're looking at a specific, maybe you just want to do www.slate.com. I don't know if Slate has .com. Let's just do slate.org. They have that. And we're going to use that as our label for our literal, but our actual value that we're going to be comparing against. And just do ping URL. So if that ping URL is slate.org, so how much time are they spending on that specific web page? So this could be really helpful if you have a list of like 5 pages that like this is the important pages, or these are maybe it's the financial aid page, it's the academic majors page, it's whatever the important pages are that's going to be a good indicator on if they're going to be coming to your institution or not. Or you could also, even if it's not engagement scoring, but like if they're spending a lot of time again on financial aid or on maybe these warning flag sites that are like, okay, they've spent 45 minutes on the events page, but they haven't signed up for an event. Maybe they just need some kind of push, or maybe, hey, they don't know about virtual events. And you could send some kind of even automated email. Again, don't say like, hey, we saw you were on our visit page for 45 minutes or 15 times. Here is a virtual visit option, or here's some information about financial aid. But just if that just happens to be in the comm flow that they're getting from your institution, like, oh, this is great. I do need to know about this. Or like, oh, I did want an opportunity to engage with the campus in some way. I just didn't know that there were virtual events or some kind of web experience. Maybe you have like a day in the life portal or something along those lines where the student is still able to engage with what a campus visit could be, but virtually. And then you could also, again, do these kinds of things against application date, admission date, or maybe during those kind of yield windows of they've deposited, but before the commit deadline, or just generally before the commit deadline after admissions. There's a lot of nuance that you can really start grabbing in the time frame that we'll cover later with the chronologian. But we'll just do number of seconds that they visit on www.slate.org. And maybe you just want something a little bit simpler. Maybe we're just going to say case when you just want to know the number of minutes. Maybe if you just want to know 1 minute, or again, we're creating bands if they've been on for 5 minutes versus 3 minutes versus 1 minute. Maybe we're starting to be able to group those behaviors of students who who behave in a similar fashion as people who are spending similar amounts of time. So maybe that's greater than 5, then 20 points. And we can just make our life a little bit faster and easier. When it's more than 1 minute, 10 points, maybe just else. Maybe if we're seeing very limited, less than a minute, we're just seeing not as much behavior, and we can end it. Or maybe we're creating a bonus like, oh, they visited unique visits. Maybe we're establishing some kind of element there. So I had like 5 exports that I wanted to talk to folks about and build through, but there's also a lot of work in those feature engineering videos that I did 2 of those as a follow-up to my Slate Summit session from 2025. I think it's the workbench walkthroughs on feature engineering, where I am building in much more detail and depth these kinds of things. But I think this is a good amount of content that we're covering for today. So as we start transitioning to our runes of practice and some advice for doing this kind of work in your own instance of Slate, what we're really trying to do is compare, at least today, that lifetime engagement level with recent activity. So you could do a dedicated field of that decelerating engagement. You could have just a report that looks at certain levels of engagement of the student has an engagement score over 50, but over the last month, they've only added 3 points to their engagement. And as you start looking at your data and start understanding the behaviors of your prospect pool, you start seeing where those warning bells are and who you need to dial the phone on. Because this is, again, flashing marquee, red sirens are going off. This student is at risk for not coming. And maybe this is a student that was super engaged or highly likely to enroll, but something happened. Maybe you saw this change when transfer credit evaluations or financial aid awards were made available, or that information, or maybe we're seeing this at an ED1 notification, and you just start starting to understand, like, oh, okay, yeah, this student got admitted somewhere else. One thing that I have found successful at other institutions was asking students, like, hey, ED1 deadline kind of passed. If you got accepted somewhere else, it's your responsibility to notify other applications to withdraw your application. If you don't want to send that to the entire prospect pool, you could just say, like, oh, okay, yeah, this group of students is likely got admitted ED to another school. That's why their engagement's dropping off. You can send a more targeted email instead of your entire applicant pool. So there's a lot of work that you can do with the either re-engaging students or just segmenting data to better communicate with them in some capacity. So when you start looking at not just what their engagement is, but actual changes in it, especially recently, it allows you to understand your student better. And when you have that understanding, you can engage with them in a more meaningful way. So adding calculated fields for like days since last event even, so it's not necessarily this full-blown secondary score that you're looking at, could allow you to highlight these students who were going through the funnel very well, but they're changing their historical pattern with your institution. They haven't opened emails, or they haven't visited campus, or they haven't engaged with their portal. That was one of the other pieces. If you're doing like a portal login, make sure you're doing things like direct login, so you're not counting impersonations. If you're getting emails in from students, that's a certain type of, and the message data table, looking not at like ad hoc emails, or not looking at deliver mailings or form communications. External messages are the ones that are coming in. If you have a lot of concern about high school counselors or parent emails that are being added to the student's timeline, but you're looking very specifically at, I want to know when the student is emailing us, you can do, again, another email comparison, looking at who the sender was and doing comparisons against the student's emails. It gets a little trickier if they have like multiple emails on file. But there is work that you can do, and just there are nuances to pulling that data in a clean way that just be mindful of. So you have raw data, you have the aggregated data, but then you can start putting this together through maybe it's populations, and you can start establishing personas of students who are decelerating, like a ghosted Greg, who was really engaged. We were really resonating with them. They were connected to our campus, but they're starting to pull back. And it could be very fast, could be very strongly. So having criteria for what is a ghosted Greg, and slotting the student into that persona, and having more tailored, personalized, or human outreach that you can't afford to send to 101 students, or you can't afford to, what is the ridiculous number of records they have in this clean slate? It's like 105,000. But if you know you have 20 ghosted Gregs they were on track, we were fully expecting them to come, and something happened, and we just need to be able to reach out. Maybe their friend told them that the school was too expensive, or they would never be successful at the school, or whatever it could be, and being able to ease those fears. That you're not going to know that they had this bad conversation with a peer or a parent or a counselor. And maybe that's justified, and maybe the school isn't the right fit for them, but maybe they need to talk to someone to understand if that fit is right. So being able to offload as much of the calculations and the work to identify these students to Slate, the better. So you can start establishing those criteria based off of your historical data, and then just a population that just slots them into Ghosted Greg, and maybe you just have a recurring email or a call list or cadence, what fun new Slate tools that just slots them in front of a person to say, hey, reach out to this person, find out what's going on, And populations are a great way to just kind of slot them in. Or maybe it's an automated email that comes from their staff assigned, asking them, hey, just checking in. How are you feeling about your college? And don't just like, hey, just checking an email, but like follow that with detailed questions like, hey, how are you feeling about college? How are you feeling about your student journey? What's going on? Start that conversation, and then when they reply, then you can get that more human touch with those students. So you identify those high scores, low recent engagement, and then you can connect them with the resources that are going to be impactful, or at least let you know, like, hey, yeah, huge family issue, don't have the money, don't have the time to go to college anymore, or I can't go out of state to your college, I'm going something local. And at least you're having that conversation and you're understanding, like, okay, yeah, totally understandable. Um, Maybe you have some kind of override with like a contact form that's just like, okay, this person is 0% likelihood to attend. And we're not going to bug them. Maybe they want to withdraw their application. Maybe they want to opt out of communications, or maybe it's just like, hey, you're still in consideration, but I'm not actively pursuing you because of these things that are going on with my life. So you're not overly bugging them, trying to get them to engage. Maybe you're just meeting them on their time. And when you do start having, whether it's the personas or fields or the entities, to at a glance or quickly pull this kind of information, that allows you to do conditional formatting, whether it's in the portal for the students, some kind of staff portal, whether it's emails. Maybe when you start seeing there is some trick that your institution has, like when someone does fall into Ghosted Greg, we do this. Whether that's a call to action, maybe it's a way that you're communicating with students in certain recurring emails or campaigns. You have a Slate data point that you can drive that conditional logic or formatting, or a Slate report that allows you to identify this early risk, make it visible to the staff, make it visible or accommodate the student who is falling into this early alert system. As there is nuance with building it, there's nuance with outreach. You don't want to just, hey, whether this is an admissions or a current student, like, hey, we think you need these additional resources, because then that's a whole layer of self-perception, self-confidence. If you tell someone they're failing, they're going to fail kind of thing. So throughout this entire process, make sure that you're treating this with the proper amount of care and infusing it with the human aspect of understanding who's on the other end. It's not just a Slate record. It's not just a data point. It's people understanding where they're coming from, what's happening, and being able to be a resource for them and their journey. And this is just a way to help get the right students in front of you to do that. Our next conversation with this topic is our discussion sparks. Where in your process do you see students quietly slipping away before even melt season? Do you know? If you don't, this is a good call to action to start looking at your historical data. What are you seeing that you can be more proactive with? And which behaviors in your data set would signal disengagement early enough to actually intervene? Just today, actually, I can timestamp that this is a live video. Tej Mattel had a great session, a great webinar talking about data. And like, oh, if they don't submit the FAFSA, that's a warning sign. But if you're waiting for them to submit the FAFSA until the deadline, you missed that opportunity. So really being able to understand what is the data that you can track or identify or float to the surface that allows you to engage the student in time or reach out to the student in time is incredibly important. So as you start looking at what data is available and how you can pull that information in a meaningful way, make sure that you're pulling data that is actually going to be able to move the needle on your staff call to actions to actually get the students the help that they need. in time to actually do it. And how could you adapt this engagement score to different applicant in inquiry, whether it's volumes, stages, whatever it could be? How could you actually use an engagement score at your institution in a meaningful way? Whether that's Ghosted Greg's or whether that's just other kind of segmenting, or how do you communicate with a highly engaged student differently? Do you send a longer email? Do you send more emails? Do you engage with do you interact with an engaged student in a richer way because that they are more likely to be reading the emails, they are spending more time per email, but then not abusing that and just writing bad emails or sending too many emails because like, oh, they're an engaged student, they want to know. They do want to know. They're probably a little bit more tolerant with a volume and intensity of an email than random prospects and inquiries that you might have in your Slate instance. But how can you make sure that you're fulfilling their needs and giving them a student experience that is tailored to where they are in the process? And that could be in their process of the cycle of a recruitment cycle, with their journey with your institution specifically. Again, understanding their engagement level, but the velocity of which the engagement is changing. Are they just kind of a slow burn? They engage every couple of weeks to get a good score? Is it they were in our system, they weren't opening emails, but now they're a 75 engagement score in the last 2 months? They went to a bunch of campus visits. They did everything they could virtually. And being able to engage with that student in a way that is respectful to them, but also capitalizes on the heat that they're bringing to that engagement and that interactions with you and that student journey. And like, you got to strike while the iron is hot. And there are students that are heating up. There are students that are cooling off, and being able to engage with them in a meaningful way based off of where they are in their college journey and their journey with your institution is so incredibly important. So as you ingest this and start thinking about engagement scoring, maybe you already do engagement scoring, maybe this is a new aspect, maybe you have a vendor who does some kind of scoring or modeling for you, create a query that shows both total engagement score or total likelihood to enroll versus what are your recent engagements, whether that is a score or just raw, like, okay, they're high engagement, but they haven't opened an email, or they stopped sending us emails. Identify at least 3 students whose recent activity has dropped sharply and outline an outreach plan for them. Are you doing something automated in Slate? Like, okay, we do need to build something a little bit more tailored to this type of student that is falling off. Are you going to call them? Are you going to email them personally? Are you going to text them? What is that outreach plan for those 3 students? It's just a 3-student pilot. What are you going to do? Share your observations and your actions that your plan has, and just take it to the comment section. Let me know how that works out for you. What are you doing? What are you planning? And as we wind down today and we start to foreshadow our next Forgeworks Grimoire training, we'll be traveling with the Threadweaver and mapping recruitment paths and shaping travel plans to meet students where their journeys begin. I will eventually get guiding artifacts up for these videos, probably something along suitcases, maybe some screenshots, maybe something a little bit more narrative as we fully embrace the Forgeworks Grimoire and the tarot of everything. But that's still TBD. Let me know, again, in the comments, what would you find helpful? Do you want a suitcase? Do you want more recordings do you want clips? I'm doing clips, so that's not necessarily a good call to action of telling me what to do. Let me know what kind of resources you'd want. Do you want one-pagers? How do you best learn? Do you want live, like interactive sessions? Let me know. And until we do meet again, may your work bridge the veil between the realms of data and understanding. Goodbye, everyone.